Okay, so let's get started with this one. This is for now a fake link that really gives you nothing, but I'll post all the census questions over here. I need to access my Dropbox. I think I forgot the password for that. I'll have it reset and I'll do it from my office. I'll just leave all the questions over here like I did for the other courses. For example, for my artificial intelligence course, I have pasted the questions from previous semesters, and I want to do the same thing for this course over here. So in a few hours, we will be there. Our exam is on by 14, okay, so we got a bit of time for that. So before we get into the topics for today, what I want to do is I want to cover the question pattern that I want to set for this exam. And yeah, then we will look into something that's going to help us do the assignment. So first up, I think that. Right, so for this midterm, let me see if we can scroll down. Okay. So for this midterm, we will have a simple task of designing a FXML user interface for a given problem. You're just going to draw the user interface. Yeah, that's going to be the task. I'll give you a description for a problem, and you'd have to draw text fields, labels, whatever is appropriate at appropriate places. let me give you some examples. In one of the recent semesters, I asked the students to design a registration system so that you can pick your courses through that system. Okay, it's going to be a JavaFX user interface, something as such. In one of our previous semesters, I asked for a user interface with which the scorer of a cricket match can enter what's going on. So if you follow Cricinfo or Tiger Cricket, you see that for every match we see the live scores. So you can actually see what's happening ball by ball, who's bowling, who's batting, and what sort of shot the player played, or what sort of ball it was. So there is a description, there is a record of how many runs were scored on that ball. So all these things have to be recorded really fast in real time so that you can see on the live view. Right? So we need a good user interface for the score. So whenever someone's bowling, I don't have to type in the entire name. Maybe they will be available on the drop box, on a drop-down menu. The way cricket matches are played, I mean, you have two bowlers bowling from two ends, and it goes on for a while, and then there is a change. So if I need to change, then I would have to, otherwise it will just swap to the next bowler. And things like that can speed up the process, it can help me write things faster. These are the considerations that you have to take as a user. So when you're trying to answer this question, you'd have to think about yourself being the user and sort of design what user interface do I need to solve this problem. So if I ask you to design a point of sale system for a departmental store, that's a very common problem. For the most of the departmental store these days, what you do is you go to the store, you pick up your own items, right? You don't have to get help from someone else. You can take a shopping cart, you can pick your items, take all these items to the cash counter, and over there they get scanned with the barcode scanner. And sometimes the barcode scanner doesn't work, they write down the ID or they search for that item, but they can find that item out, and then they will print a receipt to you. They can take these items home. But it also gets recorded in their database. So that's the beauty of it. You get a total picture of what are the items sold at any given date, at any given time. We can also return something because you got proof that you have bought all these items on that particular date. They can also look it up on their database. So for those stores that support a return policy, then they can take items back with that. Now, the reason I'm talking about this because I gave you 3 different examples. So whatever I give as this problem, you have to understand from the user perspective what you need to do, and then you design the user interface. When you design the user interface, you can use your pencil, you can just draw those boxes, you can write down the labels. What I want you to do additionally is when you design this user interface, I want you to write down what item it is. Let me give you a very quick example, a crude example at that. Okay. So let us imagine that I ask you to design a login form. Okay, I'm not going to do that because it's too simple, but it will serve the purpose really. So if you're going to draw a login form, what you'd have over here is, let's say, user name, and then we will draw a box around it. Not like that though. Something like this maybe. And yeah, just imagine that this is a rectangle, okay? Here we have a box for password. Okay, and then we will also have a button that says login. finally got one rectangle right. Okay, so this being the scenario, let us just draw a window around it. So whatever application it is, I don't know the name, but I'm just making things up. Yes. Okay, so let's say that this is the scenario, that we got a window and everything else is placed like that. You're going to design this user interface, and that's all there is to it. You're going to draw things, okay? The additional stuff that I want from you is something like this. So these are what? These two are labels, right? These two are text field. And this one over here, this is a button. Okay, so I want you guys to mark these things so that I understand what you use. Okay, and if you use a particular layout, then also mention that. So, for example, if you use the grid layout, mention that you're going to put things in a grid. Now, the reason that I ask for these things is that, like, if you have a text field and if you have a button, when you draw them, just with a pencil, it's hard to tell. It's hard to understand which one's a text field and which one's a button, so I won't have a real clue. So rather than doing that, please mark them yourself, and that's all that I ask for. Is this thing clear? For the first question that I have written over there, all you need to do is you just design the user interface. The second task is a bit more involving. This is where I may give you the UML class diagram, and based on that you're going to write the classes. So if you have multiple UML class diagrams for each of those, you'd have to write a class. So you can imagine that I give you, let me give you some examples, because I have some UML class diagrams right here in one of our projects, in some of our projects really. So when we are talking about this object-oriented programming demonstration, see, we have a class diagram for rational number, a class diagram for complex number. I may give you UML class diagrams like these, and you'd have to write the entire class. So public class rational number, you declare all the instance variables, then you declare all these methods, you write down the bodies for each of them. You have to do the whole thing. That's why it's a 10-mark question. Okay. Or I may go a different route. I may describe a problem to you, and based on that, you'd have to draw the UML class diagram yourself. I'm not saying that I will give you questions only from the stuff that I have covered in class. It can also be from topics that I haven't covered in class. But if you go through all the examples that we did in class and also complete the homeworks, maybe it won't be too difficult. Alright, so you have to have a good understanding of UML class diagram, what each of these things mean, like what the plus symbol means, why do we write this colon, what's the minus thing. So you have to understand the whole thing and then write that. We have recently covered file input output, and there will be a question based on that. Okay. It can be about reading from a file, it can be about writing to a file, it can be any variation of that. We also had a lab task related to this thing. So that can also be something where I can ask questions from. Object-oriented programming theory, well, this plain theory question but it's not supposed to be a definition-like question. I can ask you about inheritance. I can ask you about what are the real benefits of having inheritance. I'm not asking you the definition of it, but where this thing is used. Maybe give some examples to explain that point, so that I understand that you got a clear concept of the topics. The topics that you need to cover over here is abstraction, encapsulation, and inheritance. Okay. Also, I've talked about the access modifiers. That's actually part of the encapsulation business. Okay. I've talked about private, protected, and public. Okay. There can be questions about those things. Okay. So, for example, what does the protected keyword mean, and how you can limit access to a particular field with protected. So you need to know about the packages as well, because protected also affects that. The programming task, there will be some tasks based on topics we have discussed in class, and also something that we left as homework. So for example, I'm not going to give just this thing as a task, but I did this in class already, that I will give you the header of the method, then you'd have to write the body. So something like this. Let me just write this down. Okay, what I'll do is I will give you the prototype of the method or the header of the method, and you'd have to implement that. This is something I did in class, and I left some homework for you based on this. So you need to understand how these things work and then implement that in your own way. Okay, these are tasks. They will involve some conditional stuff. It can involve some looping constructs like for loop, while loop. So for while, if else, those sort of things, some basic stuff, and you also need some knowledge about the classes that we have used already, like the string class. You need to know the methods over there. Like how can you find out the length of a string? How can you access a given character index, like the character at, whether a string starts with a particular pattern, how to replace something within the string. So stuff that we have used already. I will try to make sure that I pick the methods for that list only. So that's pretty much it that I've planned for the midterm exam. So there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 questions for an hour and a half. Shouldn't be too tough. If you know how to solve these problems, you should be done within an hour. The half hour is just extra. Sorry about that interruption. So yeah, this is pretty much it. I will allow you guys to bring in cheat sheets if you feel that they're going to help. So you can write down the methods from the string class, some examples, what they do. If you want to bring in some UML class diagrams to to help you out. If you want to write down some OP theory, well, that's up to you. So you are allowed to Okay, so this is an optional thing. Whether you're going to use this cheat sheet or not, it's really up to you. If you do, please make sure that you write it by hand. It cannot be typed. It cannot be a printed thing. And it cannot be a photocopy of someone else's work. If you want to use that, please prepare it yourself. And also write down your name and ID on top right corner. But please make sure that I sign this cheat sheet before the exam starts. The reason for this is maybe I won't be there in the exam hall in your room, not for the entire time. I'll definitely come and answer your queries if you have some. But there will be other people who will be working as invigilator for the exam, and if they see that you have a cheat sheet on you, they may expel you from the exam. So I need to make sure that I sign this and say that this is okay. I'll have it written on the question paper that you're allowed to bring in a cheat sheet, but there are some limitations over here. So, yeah. Any question about the exam? Anything at all? Okay. So, like you see already, that you'd have to answer all the questions. But it's not going to be a big deal because I'm actually being very specific about where the questions are going to be from and what type of questions to expect. Okay, so ideally speaking, if you're going to prepare for this exam, this is a really easy exam to write. That's my understanding. All right. Okay. So for the upcoming quiz, why did I not declare the date over here? Our lab classes are on Mondays, right? So on 19th we'll have a quiz. So let me just write this down. So on Monday we'll have a quiz, and for that I'm asking you guys to read chapter 7 from Java How to Program. So if you go there, they are covering a particular topic called arrays and array list, and along with that they are also talking about exceptions. Now turns out that the topic that we're going to talk about today, they will need some concepts about arrays and array list as well. So let me fire up NetBeans and we will start a new project and I'll show you what it is. this is going to be about a bank account, and this is going to work our assignment. So when we open up a bank account, I'm going to copy some of the classes that we have created before, like the parent account, the savings account, and all that. I will copy those codes. We're going to build a user interface. We will create an account. Once the account is created, we will be able to perform some operations on those accounts. Operations like how to withdraw money, how to deposit more money into a particular account. Now, if you do that, see, how many accounts are we going to create over here? There can be a lot, right? So it's not a fixed number. If you ask the same question in a different context, let's say we want to build a software that lets us record student accounts of Southeast University, we can't really put a number to that. We don't know ahead of time how many students we will have altogether. Do you have any random guess how many students we have had in Southeast University starting from 2002? The total number of students in all the programs, in all the semesters. Any guess? 10,000? 50,000?
2 lakh.
Yeah, 10,000 is a bit too low, 2 lakh is a bit too high. 50 is probably right there. 52,000 something is the number. 52,000. Okay, so, why am I saying this? Because when we started Southeast University, we probably didn't know what to expect, right? How many students are going to come in each semester. And if you are going to create an array, what we learned in C programming, that you can have a collection with an array. The problem with array is that it has a very fixed size, right? So if I create a bank, and then I can say that I will have at most 10,000 clients, I can do that. I can start with that because initially I won't have any client at all. So I have 0 clients and I can go up to 10,000. What happens when I have 10,001 clients? I cannot load up all these clients into memory anymore. I can save them into a file. That's not a problem. I cannot read them back in memory. So the first problem that we're going to address over here in this bank account example, let me look at the projects. Let's see what we got. We got too many projects on. All right, so let me close the projects and reopen this one. Bank account UI. Okay, and I would like to open the user interface first. And we do that thing with Scene Builder. So delete these things, I don't need them anymore. And I'll just drop a grid pane over here because I need some labels and text fields in place. Alright, so this is quite self-explanatory, but let me tell you anyways what I want out of it. This form is going to be used to create new bank accounts, okay? So we're going to take the account ID, account name, some address, and the balance, and then we will be able to create an account. The reset button is there to make sure that we can clear out these fields, okay? And once we create this account, it will get saved into a file. We may have 10 accounts, we may have 10,000 accounts. So we will need a feature that lets us go through all these accounts that we have created. We can browse through accounts. We can perhaps make changes. One key thing that may need to change is the address field, right? We're not going to change the account ID or account name, but we may have to change the address from time to time. If we move to a different location, we have to update that. The balance, we're not going to change it from here. This is for the opening balance though. When you open the account, we're going to mention the amount. But later on, we're not going to allow anyone to change this balance. The balance is only going to change through withdraw and deposit. So that's sort of the scenario that we're going to address. The challenge right now is to make sure that all the bank accounts get created and saved into a file. We know how to use file input output, so we'll be using that idea. Is this thing clear? I got a bit of a problem with the address field right here because I wanted to support multi-line addresses, and it doesn't really look nice the way it is. To make sure that I got enough space, what I'm going to do is I will say that column span is not remaining, actually 2. I'm going to use 2 columns, 2 rows rather, to write the address. Now that's better. Okay. So with that out of the way, we can also resize this a bit if you want to make sure that these columns, they get a bit more space. You can definitely make changes to these sizes, and also I'm a little bit picky about this. I want to leave some spaces all around. It just looks better that way. Okay, so this is the basic setup. All right. So in order to use this form, what we do need is some FX IDs for all these text fields, because how else am I going to know what's the account ID and what's the account name? Let us give some meaningful names for each of these things. Let's say this is going to be our ID text field, or ID field if you want to keep it short. This is going to be our name text field. This one is the address text area, and finally the balance text field. So we got 2 buttons. One is this reset button. Let's say this is going to be handle reset action, and this is the handle create account action. Is this clear? Okay. Now in order to use these things, if you just go over here and hit make controller, you'll see that everything gets updated. We don't have any label, so let us delete that. We don't have anything called handle button action, so let us delete that as well. So we got 2 things, handle reset action and handle create account action. Okay, so far so good. Now what we need is a YAML class diagram, because we need to create the data types, what sort of data we are going to store. Okay, we haven't written one line of program yet. We are still at the designing stage. We have designed the user interface, and now we are going to design this YAML class diagram for this new data type called the bank account. So what are the things that we store about the bank account? yeah, the account ID, which can be, let's say, long, or it can be a string depending on the application. Account name is a string, and address is another string, and finally we got the balance as double. Okay, so let me apply them, and over here we need the get methods for each of these things, and we need set methods for some of these things. Okay, first of all, let us start with the constructor. The name of the operation is bank account. It needs the parameters. We need account ID, which is long. We need account name, which is a string. We need a address, that's another string, and finally we need the balance, which is double, right? So apply all that. That's the constructor right there, and we may have get account ID, which returns a long for us. I'm not going to write the other ones because they're just the same. Okay, I'll ask you to write them. I mean, you should write them all. Okay, it's not an option. You should write them all, but I'm just going to show you some examples. So set address, the address might change. That's why we're going to write it in this way. Set address takes the address as parameter, so we write that in. The more important methods that we should have is the get balance. What if I want to know my balance? Returns a double. What if I want to withdraw money? So that's going to be withdraw, and for the withdraw method to work, we need to pass how much money we want to withdraw. We want to deposit money, and that's, again, we have to write amount. Let's say we want to deposit integer amount. Okay. And we may want to get a string representation of this thing, and previously we have called a print method. Let me start with this, but I will change this one. We'll have a print method to print the account. Okay, so this is how it looks like, this bank account. This is exactly how it looks like, and let me save this before I forget to do it. So this is inside this one, and this is our bank account.dia. Alright, so given this data type, what we are going to do next is we are going to create a class out of it, where we have all these attributes, we have all these methods, we need to write a body of type. Now, class diagram helps us know the data types, so it tells us what the method names are, what the attributes are, but it doesn't really tell us how to write the program, how to write this method. This is something you have to figure out on your own through some other mechanism. But this is always a good start. Okay, you draw the diagram first, not write the code first. You have to have that practice. All right, so let us create this thing. Let us create this new file, and we're going to create a Java class. This is going to be bank account. Since I'm using NetBeans, I have a lot of advantages. I can get the constructor, select all the fields, and hit generate. So I got the constructor in. I can also get all the get methods Okay, I can also have a set method, so alter insert setter for the address only. What else? We need the withdraw, the deposit, and a print method. So public void withdraw integer amount, and this is where balance will be balance minus amount. For deposit, deposit is going to increase our balance, so balance equal to balance plus amount. And let us also have a print method, which we will modify in a bit. This prints it out on the console. So let's say we print the ID of the account, which is account ID. We put the name over here. Account name, and finally let us print the balance. Which is the balance, okay? So this is one way to use this print thing, and we were mostly using printf, right? So let me copy this. We could do the same thing with printf. This is where we print a number. Account ID followed by name is a string, followed by balance, which is a floating point number, and let's say we print 2 digits after the dot. So altogether we'd have all these things. So account ID, comma, account name, comma, balance. So these 2 lines, they mean the same thing. It's just that I'm using printf for the same one. So we can put the format specifier in places and let it take care of the entire thing. So that's our print method. Okay? Now, first of all, we need to test this out, and we need to put it into our code as well, that we can create a bank account with the given information over here. So let me show you how we know to use these things. We go to the controller and we go to this handle create action, and over here the flow would be something like this, that we have filled in the account ID, account name, and address and balance, right? We take information from all these things, create a bank account, and then we try to save this into a file. Is this thing clear? So how do we do this? You take this ID text field and take the value. Account ID is going to be ID text field dot get text. Okay, but that doesn't work because this is a string, and what we need on the left hand side is long. So how do you convert a string to a long? Previously what we used for integers is called integer.parseInt, but as you can see that the data type is different, so the method has to be different as well. Long.parseLong. And similarly we have other methods. We have integer.parseInt, we have double.parseDouble. So based on the data type, you have corresponding methods that lets you take a string and convert it to that data type. Okay. So that's one thing out of the way, and string account name equal to, where do we get the name from? name text field dot get text. We don't have to convert this. The address comes from the address text, actually address text area rather, dot dot get text. What else? And the balance is balance text field dot get text However, as you notice that we got a string over here on the left side, we got double. So to make sure that it works, we need to convert that using double dot parse double. Is this thing clear? Now once we get all these information from the text fields, what we need to do is we have to create an object. So you write bank account equal to new bank account. You pass the account ID, account name, address, and balance. Okay, so once you have the bank account created, the next thing would be to, let's say, print it out or to save it to a file. So for now, since we don't have any option to save it to a file, let's just say bank account.print to see if we got the information right. Now if you run this project, we get all these things. Let's just say 45 and some random text over here, and some amount, and say create account. It says 45, that's the name, and we see the balance. We don't see the address because it wasn't printed. So where does it print this thing? To the console. It's not writing to a file. Is this thing clear? Okay. And that can be an issue, right? Why? Because this is always going to print to the console the way this is written with the print method. If I want to get a string representation out where we have the ID, the address, and the balance, we can't use this print method because this is already directly printed. So what we want to do rather is to change it to a string. However, see what we do. We just print it out using system.out.printf. What am I expecting in this method? Is it to return a string. Now let me show you why I need that. Why I even ask for a string. Because if I get a string out of it, let's say that's the message. Okay. And what I can do with this now is we can say system.out.println message. We can print it out like that, and that's going to print it where? On the console. Alternatively, let's say we have a random access file called output. We can also say output.writeBytes message. See what's the real benefit of it? In the print method, if you leave it as void and you print it directly to the console, you cannot reuse the output into something else. I mean, this is not going to compile right now. We need to write entire characters and we need to import a few things. But the idea is there. We have some random access file called output. We can use the same string. We can use the same message string once to print it on the console, and we can use it also print it onto a file. That's why these print methods are usually not there. We don't really write print methods. What we write instead is a method that returns a string, and as convention goes, we write it as toString. Okay? What does it do? It returns a string for us. This is printing to the console, so this is not going to work. Turns out it's really very easy to do. We just say string.format. Instead of saying system.out.printf, you say string.format, and this is where you get a string out of it. So when you say return string.format, this whole thing, it actually gives you a string representation. Is this thing clear? Instead of saying system.out.printf, which prints to the console, if you want to get a string out of it, you just say string.format. So we got this thing, we got the string formatted and returned back to the to this method, and we can print this out. See, the method is no longer print, it's called toString. It will convert the object into a string for you. And let me just show you how this thing works. If you run this project now, so it actually prints this out. How does it do that? We get this message, we convert it to toString, and then we print it. The interesting thing about this is you can now actually use the bank account itself without any modification, and you can just pass that and it will still print things right. So it still prints this thing right. See, we didn't even call the toString. Okay. If you didn't have this toString method in, now it prints something very cryptic. It says bank.account.ui bank account at 265C57D2. Really means nothing. This is what we know as a hash code. I'll talk about that later if I get a chance. But this really serves no purpose because we cannot get the address out of it, we cannot get the ID and name out of it. It's just not there. So, in order to get these things to work, you need to make sure that we have a toString method. Now is the important question, that how does Java know that there is called a toString, because I'm not even calling that. I mean, if I called toString over here, that would make sense, right? That I call this method and that's why this gets executed, but over here I'm not even calling this method. See, this is a very important concept for you to understand, is that even if you don't say anything, all the Java classes, they extend from a class called object with uppercase O. Class and object, they are totally two different concepts. Class is the blueprint, it's the idea, and the objects, they are the realization of it. They are the actual existence of it. So student may be the idea, you guys are the objects. Student is the class, you guys are the objects. So even if I don't say anything, Java extends from a class, and this may be a little bit confusing because this thing is actually called the object class. The object class is the superclass of all the classes in Java. There are some methods in the object class. So let me just take a little bit of time to show you this. Java Object Class API, if you look for it, let's look at the JDK 8 version. So you'd see that we have method called toString, which actually returns a string representation of that object. Okay. All right, so that's the basic idea about having a toString. And let us put everything together, that we can put it, print it out on a console like this, on the console like this. I need to make a small change. I don't want to print the new line. I want it to be in my control whether I want it or not. So I can print it like this, or I can also write it to a random access file. So let's say we have a file called accounts.txt, and in order to write to that, we have to use read-write mode, right? And we need some imports. We have done that before, so let me just do this quickly. It goes into the try-catch block. Now, previously we have changed this line. I'm going to leave it like that. What we can do is we can go onto the append mode, because I don't want to destroy the existing accounts. I'm just going to write this one over here. So what we do is we find out the length of the file. We say output dot length, and then we set our file pointer to that point. How do we do it? There is a method called seek. Okay. And for both these things, you need a catch clause. That's for the IO exception. Okay. So I have covered these things when we talked about file input output, and you guys need to know these things for the exam as well. I may ask you to write something in append mode. That's when you have to add these two lines. If I ask you to erase everything and write fresh, then what you say is output.setLength 0, and that's what it does. So actually I have covered these things in class. Now since this is in append mode, we can write new stuff to it. We can say output.write bytes, and this is where we pass the account information, the bank account itself. Okay. We need to convert that to string, so make it toString, and along with that we can add a new line, so that the next time we add a new account, it goes to the next line. And you can also omit this toString call, because when you see that it gets concatenated with a new line character, it knows that the left side will be another string, and it will automatically call the toString method that we have created. And that's because it extends from the object. See, I wrote this on a purpose because I wanted you guys to know this, but since this is already a convention in Java, you don't have to write that. Okay, so with that out of the way, let us test this out, whether we can write the bank accounts to the text file. Let us create some accounts over here. It jumped. Okay, so we're going to create an account for Hassan Tariq Sir, and it prints on the console. Let us see if we got it saved over here. This is our bank account UI. We do have a accounts.txt file, and if you open that, you'll see that we have that information written out. Okay, so the next time we run this project and we create a separate account, that will go into the next line. And let us try this out right away. So we're going to create another account. Now, see, as a user of this system, I'm confused already. Like I'm building this system myself, but it's not really helpful. First of all, when I created this account and saved it to a file, there was no visual feedback. And if you don't give me any visual feedback, I don't know what's happening. Okay? So when you don't see anything, I mean, you'd be confused whether it saved the account, whether this was created or not. So you'd be clicking this thing like 1,000 times. And what that means is that it will have the same entry over here. Okay? That's not what we intend to do. So what we will do as developers of this system will be clearing this out, just to give you a visual cue that yes, I have already entered this account information, so you can enter a new account. That's also convenient, so that the next time you enter account details for another person, the form is free. So we're supposed to reset the form after the first one is done. It would also help if you can give me a message, preferably in green letters, saying that yes, the saving was successful. If for some reason the save failed, you should prompt me with a dialogue saying that some sort of error happened and I couldn't save the record. I need to know that. That's more important information. Yeah, if you save this, that's also important, but you don't have to stop me from whatever I'm doing. Alright, so we need to modify this. That's the message. But let me create another account anyways. Okay, so let us open up an account for Akib sir with a balance of 5 taka. And we get that. This is where I wanted this one to be though. Okay. Just because I manually edited that, that's why we have a new line there. Now, you guys get the idea, right? As we keep on creating new accounts, they get saved into this text file. So where do we go from here? Actually, at the end of the class, I won't be able to do it today, but you need to understand this. That, say this is the user creation form. There will be another form that lets us edit these things, or lets us search through the client database. Okay. What if I know the client ID, I want to pull up the record, there will be a search box where I can type in the ID and the client record will be shown to me. Or I can do something like I can do a name-based search. There can be a lot of records over here and I want to find out the customer with a particular name. Okay, so I can type in the name and then that customer's record comes in. Or it can be a list of 5 suggestions and I can pick one from there. Okay. Like if you're typing a message on Facebook, if you want to tag someone, if you type in the first 3 letters of that person's name and you get a drop down of what to choose. Okay, so something as such. JavaFX has all those features. Some of these things we will see in this course, some of these things I'll leave it on you guys to explore. Okay. Sorry, forgot to ask. So that is pretty much it, right? So we have started creating this thing and it's going to be part of our assignment. I don't want you to do exactly how I do it over here. You have to come up with your own idea of the user UI representation. I will do bits and pieces of this assignment over here. What will be our banking system, right? So this is one key part of the banking system because that's where everything starts. You have to be a client of the bank to use the services. So this is where we create the clients, and then we will come up with a user interface where we can do our transactions. So something like you'll have a user interface where you get to choose the account number. The client will come and show you some sort of identification, give you a card, that this is my account ID. So you open up that account. You can see the profile, you can make changes, or you can also do the transactions. if the client says that I want to withdraw 1,000 taka from my account, there will be a choice whether I want to withdraw or I want to deposit. I'll pick that. I'll say how much money I want to deposit or withdraw. I'll mention that and hit OK. So that will get recorded, and it will also be shown in my history what are the things I have done with this account. Okay. So these are the things we can sort of imagine that we will do these things, and it's really easy to implement most of the tasks. We'll see how we can implement that. Not today, we're already running over time, so sometime in the next lesson. So whatever I've shown over here is really nothing new. It just took me some time to build the UI. It's still about the file I/O concept. You guys need to have a good understanding of that. That would be in your midterm exam as well. Any question about any of these things? No? All right, so let us stop right there then.